Welcome to this class, to this first class of Gnosis. The first thing I want to tell you is that you have patience to understand what Gnosis is. Because we have to live Gnosis, we have to experience it. And we are going to develop in this class, in this first class, many points so that you have a reference of what it is about. What is Gnosis about? Gnosis is a Greek word that means knowledge. But what knowledge are we talking about? Gnosis is profound and it is immersed in the same life, in creation. So what I want to tell you is that do not think that with a class you will understand well what Gnosis is. Yes, of course, we are going to try to give the screenshots that clarify the doubts and concerns about what all this is. We are going to need to make an effort and pay attention with the mind and with the emotion to everything we are going to say. And we are also going to tell you that it is very important that you at least see the first 3 classes that we are going to do. Because in those 3 classes, they are summarized all the things that will later unfold in all the topics that we are going to touch throughout the course. Have patience, have perseverance above all, and give an opportunity to all this profound knowledge of life. And speaking of knowledge, we can say that there are 3 types of knowledge. The most common knowledge, the most normal, so to speak, of life, is the knowledge that one learns from the simple fact of living. For example, washing clothes, or cooking, making tea, are things of daily life. What I say is normal, there is nothing strange in this, and it is important because it is what allows us to live. The second type of knowledge already requires an effort to achieve it. A minimum effort. It is intellectual knowledge, and this happens since childhood, the first childhoods where children go to preparatory school, to preschool, to elementary school, to primary school, to high school, even to university. We are going to learn things that are written and said by others. But what happens? Although this knowledge is very important, and it generates a structure in society so that it can work. Study medicine, study law. What this type of knowledge does not do is answer the most intimate questions that we can have with life. It does not answer the existential questions of life. It answers the eternal questions. Why am I alive? What for? What is the purpose of life? Where was I before I was born? Where will I be after I die? These are transcendental and very deep questions that most people ask themselves. At some point in their lives, and some much more. You have to be careful with thoughts, with concepts, because many concepts, many ideas of their own want to answer these questions. No, I think such and such. But They are not going to answer. We are simply making a conjecture. But yes, the people who have answered these transcendental questions are people who have come to the planet, to life, and have developed their consciousness. They have awakened, and they have come to explain to us this and more. And this is the third type of knowledge, the Gnosis, the transcendental knowledge, atemporal, universal, of life, of creation, and of the human being. So, we don't have to confuse concepts, philosophies, ideas, with the superior knowledge, with knowing, living it, what we know. Well, that's why, and that's why, many religions that speak with knowledge of many things seem so different from each other. Because, over the centuries, the teaching is getting lost, and the intellect comes in to bring out conjectures. But the Gnosis is at the base of all the great cultures, of all the great religions, of those cultures, and in the why of the birth of those religions that seek in themselves, in their foundation, in their root, to connect with the divinity, with something superior to what we see with the five senses. And this is the Gnosis, knowing what it is, and having the tools to be able to do it, because these beings that have come to show how to do it, and they have come to show and to tell how they have done it, and they have always given their lives to tell this. The Gnosis vibrates in the primitive Christianity, in the authentic Buddhism. It vibrates in the Muslim Quranic tradition. In the base, there is the Gnosis. There is the transcendental knowledge. There is the search for the truth. And all these religions are created by the teachings of these holy men that have an information, a knowledge. All the cultures lived the knowledge of the universal knowledge. They have experienced it. The Egyptian culture, the Mayan culture, the Aztec culture, the Chinese culture, the Celtic culture, the African culture, the Amerindian cultures. All of them have experienced the Gnosis, the Hindu culture, the Buddhism. All of them lived that knowledge, and we see it. We are in the art, in the sacred writings that tell very similar things. The way they always talk about a creator or the flood. All cultures have talked about things like that throughout the history of humanity. But I repeat, we think that these cultures are different and that they are talking about different things. But the problem is that we are seeing from this point in time of humanity, we are seeing the past. So we are observing different cultures that seem to talk about different things, but that were in different moments of history, with millennia of years or centuries of time difference between each other. So the languages, the culture, the symbolism, the region of the planet change. That is why the form of the message changes. But behind the form of the message is the universal, timeless knowledge. And we are going to make an effort to be able to demonstrate this, because it is not so easy, because we are seeing the ancient world, but there are other ways to know the ancient world, and we will talk about this throughout the classes, of course. For example, we see the Trinity. We see the Trinity in all cultures. In Christianity we have the Father, the Mother and the Son, or the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. What is this? In Egypt we have Osiris, Isis and Horus, the sun. In the Nordic Viking culture there was Odin, Freyja and Thor. All of us are talking about the same thing. They studied creation. They knew that there were three creative forces in the universe. And this is the Trinity, the three creative forces. The three is very important in creation. And we are also going to see it. Master Gurdjieff also talked about this three, about the holy affirmation, about the holy denial, and about the holy reconciliation. Also Master Samael Aun-Weor, that we are going to tell about his life at the end of this class. Samael Aun-Weor makes the synthesis of the importance of spiritual teachings for this era. And we are going to see it. We are going to study it. The work of Master Samael is very complete. Going back to the three, we see, for example, the atom, the same base of life, the proton, the electron and the neutron. So what we can understand is that there is a positive force, a negative and a neutral, that they believe, and the neutral is a force that is nourished by the other two. It is a force that unites the other two, and that conciliates the other two. That's why Master Gurdjieff talks about the holy reconciliation. The light bulb is being made of neutral force, and there the light appears with the two poles of electricity. There would be no light there if there were no two poles in electricity in the cable. So, also in India, we have the Trimurti, the Holy Trinity, their Holy Trinity. We have Brahma, we have Shakti, and we have Vishnu, the Son. Shakti, the Divine Mother, sometimes it is named Shiva, which has to do with Shakti. It is the husband, and we will see that too later. All civilizations were called. This is to see a little the universality of the Gnosis. All civilizations were called solar or serpentine, but it is not a matter of worshipping the physical sun. They were worshipping the manifestation of this energy of the universe, the sun. They were worshipping the incarnation of a force that is universal, that is part of the creation. There is science in this. We are going to see it too. All the transcendental cultures, historically important, that we know, And I am convinced that we do not know too. Were serpentine. What does this mean? That they had the snake as a symbol. And we know a snake as a symbol that we have in our culture, in Christianity, above all. We know that there is the tempting snake of Eden. That snake that tempts Adam and Eve. And few people know that in cultures there are always two snakes. And what is this? There is a higher snake and there is a lower snake. We could say a snake good and a bad snake as a symbolism of something. Of what? The lower snake. I just mentioned it. We can understand and we can know that myth. Understand that snake, if it tempted them, very good. It was not that we say, very superior. It was not that we say, but what happens? In the same Judaism, in the same Christianity, there is also another snake that very few people know. That is the snake that Moses lifts on a stick, on a branch, in the desert. This is in, I think it is the book, Numbers, of the Old Testament. And in that book, it tells how the Israelites were being bitten by snakes, the lower snake clearly. Jehovah, God, says to Moses to lift upon a snake and show to the Israelites that they had to see that snake, not the one that they were bitten. And biting, I mean that they were killing them. This bronze snake is a superior snake that the initiator Moses took as a symbolism. And we are going to see it in many cultures. This is not only from the Bible. The Bible is a sacred book, like many other sacred books. The same Jesus. This is not only for Judaism, because the same Jesus, and he says it in the Gospel of John, says that not only do we have to believe in him, but we have to lift the snake as Moses did in the desert. And what's he talking about? The snake has always been associated with the regenerative power, with the power of immortality, with the power of fertility. But we in Gnosis are going to talk about the snake as a symbol associated with the creative energies. And what are the creative energies? Where do they manifest? In sexuality. In sexuality is the power of creation. And this eating the apple, being tempted by a snake, has to do with sexuality. The tree of good and evil, to be equal to God, there, Adam and Eve, has to do with sex, everything that happened there, and we are going to see it later. And we are going to show some examples of this. In Indian culture we see that there are two snakes as well. The Kundalini, which is an energy that is very well known today by the people who do yoga, for example. The Kundalini is an energy associated with our Divine Mother. And it has a serpentine form. And the other snake, which is the one that subdues Krishna, the one that ends up killing Krishna, is Kaliya. Kaliya. These are the two snakes of Hinduism. And we will talk a lot about the Kundalini, about the energy associated with our mother, about this electronic energy. We will talk a lot about this. It is very important. In the culture of the Egyptians, we see Apophis or Apep. They also call it, which is a snake that interrupts the boat of Krishna. This snake is called Ra, of the god Ra. Here is the lower snake. And on the other hand, we see the Urios snake, which is the snake that the pharaoh priests, had on their heads. That is next to a vulture, which also has a meaning, and we will talk about it later. But here is the upper snake. Why would they have a snake on their forehead? In Judaism or in Christianity, we see what I just said. Moses lifting the snake in an aft. And what is the aft? Those who know the Kundalini know that the Kundalini is an energy that is at the base of the spine in the etheric body, the aft of Moses. And what does it represent? The vertebral column. We also have, in Greek culture, in Roman culture, the god Asclepius or Scilapius. And what do they have? A rod with a snake. And these were gods of medicine. How can it be? We see the snake even in the same symbol of medicine. Those two snakes that cross each other in a rod. And up there are two wings. All that has a symbolism. We will see it. We also see Python, who is killed by the god Apollo. We have to understand that the snake represents our way of relating to sexuality. Sexuality is very important for life. There is no life without sexuality. There is no universe. There is no creation. There are no human bodies, no animals, no vegetables, not even minerals. If we go to Aztec culture, we also see that it is a spiritual culture. Look at Quetzalcoatl, the myth of Quetzalcoatl, the initiator Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. This myth says that symbolically we have to become a serpent, to be symbolically devoured by the eagle. What is the eagle? The eagle is the being. It is our divine part. This is a symbolism that we can see in the flag of Mexico. The eagle and the serpent. And all cultures, in addition to the serpent, share other things. Of course, if they were all talking about the same thing, if they are all based on their religious, mystical culture. The Gnosis, the higher knowledge. We are talking about one thing. The reincarnation, for example. In primitive Christianity, there was reincarnation. Until the year 300. Reincarnation was part of Christianity, and they had a name for this. Metempsychosis. Metem comes from meta, which means after. And psychosis comes from psyche, which means soul. So they were talking about what happened to the soul once it came out of the body. You can find this. Metempsychosis is a very well-known word today. In Jainism too, which is a religion that came after Hinduism, something like that. They also talk about reincarnation. Even in Hinduism, they say that if we do good deeds, we will incarnate in a deva. in a semi-divine entity. As I just said, in Hinduism that is also known. In Hinduism, reincarnation is very common. Anyone understands that in India, or in the regions. In Buddhism, any Buddhist understands that reincarnation is part of existence. Only in our culture we have a problem with that. The Dalai Lama himself. It is the 14th Dalai Lama. He incarnated 14 times. He knows that he incarnated 14 times. Even if there are people who do not believe it, it does not matter. It does not matter to believe in something so that something is. That is what we have to understand. That is why we in Gnosis like to go to the deep and to the experience of the real. To look in the practices for the experience of the real. Many things that are lost in the night of the centuries. Of the millennia, many things of religions. The Buddha taught. The supersexuality. The transcendental sexuality. That is going to create other things. Sexuality is very important. But with the passage of the millennia, of the centuries, things are getting lost. But there are other methods to discover them. We will go there. Speaking, experiencing in the possible, and sharing the tools for that. For example, it is found at the end of the 70s. It is found the Gospel of Judas. Like the Gospel of Judas, yes, Master Samael Aunweor speaks in the 50s. That Judas, he was fulfilling a role that Jesus himself had told him that he fulfills. Judas was one of his best disciples. There is the Gospel of Judas. For the one who wants it, I can pass it to him. This is what Samael spoke in the 50s. The Gospel of Judas. It was discovered in the 70s. In the 80s. I do not know. I remember well. Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene. Look how things are lost on the night of the centuries, as the Master says. Mary Magdalene, that they have titled her a prostitute. Who? Can someone pass me in the Bible? Where does she say she is a prostitute? In none of the Bible says she's a prostitute. That was the Pope, Gregory, in the year 591, that invented that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. That's where it started. Before the denigration of the woman to go down, we are going to work on it because they know the power that women have. And the important thing is women, because they don't want to practice supersexuality, that we practice the ancient and authentic knowledge of the masters who came to share and explain how they did to be masters. Or perhaps the master is not a student before. Or perhaps it is not said that the master is within one. So if one is not a master, what do we have to do to be masters? And that is the way. The woman was sacred for the ancestral cultures. That is why the goddesses are everywhere. Life is born from her. And they were sacred in the temples. They were priests. In the tarot we see the priestess, for example. We will also talk later about the tarot and the arcanes. Many secret things, many things to reveal. They degraded women. They degraded women to deny supersexuality. And this is the universalism of knowledge. In all authentic religions there is the same basis. The Gnosis is found in Christianity. It is found in Buddhism, in Hinduism. It is found in Kabbalah. It is found in alchemy. We will talk about alchemy. We will talk about Kabbalah. It is found in ancient Freemasonry. Why Freemasonry? Who were they? If you look at Freemasonry, there is the symbol that the G has. The G is Gnosis. Gnosis is knowledge. The 33 degrees of the Freemasons. What are the 33 degrees? What is the 33? The spine has 33 vertebrae. We will talk about all this. Gnosis is the sum of spiritual aspirations. Through the centuries, through the millennia, it is the deep knowledge of man. It is the knowledge of the universe, of functionalisms. In fact, Master Samael Aun tells us that Gnosis is a functionalism of the conscience. It is something that is within us, and we have to reveal it. And the Gnosis not only seeks to study creation or the parallel dimensions, Gnosis is that intimate that discovers. It is not because we do not have a device to discover. It is to see the soul, that the soul does not exist. The soul exists the same, things exist the same, although we have not discovered them. But we have to go beyond the 5 senses, because we are going to stay in only this dimension of knowledge. So, it is not the discoveries that make things. It is not when something appears in the history of humanity. That makes something exist. Things exist before. So this is very important. Gnosis was not invented by anyone. It is within us. And life itself is going to seek this Gnosis, this knowledge, at its due time. But we have to make an effort. And we are going to talk about it. The Gnosis and the tools of the Gnosis is discovered by those who experience while they discover. The discovery is the experience. And that is the Gnosis. And it is the Gnosis, like the veil of Isis. It is showing us that something is being covered. So when the veil is discovered, we can know. Get to know yourself. Socrates said, although some say, or they are saying that it was not Socrates who started saying that. But it does not matter. Get to know yourself, and you will know the universe and the gods. We have to discover ourselves. Unveil what is inside us. And when we discover ourselves, we are going to discover the universe. We are going to discover the mysteries of the universe. Awakening has no price. The Gnosis gives tools for awakening. Because they are of humanity. Because they are of all. And the Gnosis seeks with those tools the awakening of consciousness and the awakening of the latent faculties of every human being. The latent faculties of every human being, kindly look, they have to do with power. Powers like clear-sightedness, the clairaudience, the superior inspiration. And it is not that we seek power, because the power comes. The powers arrive when the initiate works on his consciousness and works with sexuality in a superior way. The powers arrive to the initiate when he has merits and the divinity knows it. When he helps others, when he behaves in a superior way, when he awakens consciousness, when he awakens his virtues, his values, when he disintegrates his egoic parts, the temptation, the patience, the help to others, the empathy, that of putting yourself in the place of the other and of feeling, that is part of the consciousness. And that is what we have to develop, and it is developed working on oneself. And with the creative energy. So, I repeat, awaken consciousness and awaken the latent faculties that will come by addition to the Gnostic, inner and deep work, through the practices and the sincerity of the self-knowledge and the self-knowledge, through the practices and the sincerity of the sensual, through the enlightenment, through the four rays of the ourself. By going to the Mother Gia composes the powers are not of one, they are of the being. And we, in this work, serve the being. We serve our divine, spiritual part. Let's look at the Bible. It is full of transcendental events. Sacred fires that do not burn. Burning chariots that speak. Angels that speak and appear. All this is what is there for all of us. It is of all of us. And if we look at the word realization, we see the first four letters that say real. Because we are going to incarnate realities, universal truths that are latent within us too, and of the being of that which makes us exist, of our divine part that we have to incarnate. So, all the truths that exist, it is the Gnosis. It is something of nature. It is something of creation, of the human being. No one can say that the sun does not rise from the east. To know, to experience, to have the tools to verify it. It is Gnosis. Yes, of course. So, I repeat, no one invented the Gnosis. The Gnosis was discovered. It is discovered by the great masters who have the awakened consciousness. The awakened consciousness. And who can understand the illusion of all this. The illusion of life. Maya, as the Hindus speak. We will also see that it is very important the psychological work with oneself. And that this psychological work, because this is something that we are going to talk about too, it is linked in the alchemy. It is linked to the Mercury of the philosophers, and all the part of that I named of the powers that are awakened, of the powers about the four elements that the initiate awakens. It has to do with the Kundalini, with that snake, with that serpentine energy. It has to do with the superior sexual energy, and this. It has to do with the sulfur of the alchemy. The alchemy. For the intimate self-realization of the being, the Gnosis has always been based and has manifested itself through four pillars. What are these things? The philosophy, the science, the art and the mysticism, or religion. Without the mysticism there is no knowledge. So, be careful that the Gnosis is not a religion, because a religion is like a dogma. People may not know what they are believing, may not have an idea of what they are dealing with, and they repeat. But the Gnosis is not a religion because it is based on the direct experience of things, in knowing them, in embodying them. The religion without science is blind, and the science without religion chooses, as if something is missing. So, the religion without science can make people believe anything. How many things are like this, turning around? How many swindlers? That is not true religion. And the science without religion is missing something. It is materialistic. It will see only in the five senses, in the matter. To know the truths of the universe, they will never find it. In the matter, they will never find it. The power of the awakened consciousness is needed to be able to understand. For example, that for something there is no definitive cure for a flu. Why there is no definitive cure for a flu? Why cannot be cured in 3D? Why cannot be cured in the third dimension? The flu has its center of gravity in the fourth dimension. It is an entity, a malignant entity, that takes over our energy. What happens sometimes and sometimes does not have to do with some other things. We will not talk about that now. But there it is. There is no definitive cure for the flu. The flu comes back. So it is not something that they have not wanted to cure. The flu is what perhaps anyone would like to make a remedy for the flu, and that never again one has the flu. But it does not happen like that. There are no vaccines for that. And ancient science, that is modern science, but ancient science, and that is why Einstein spoke of this. Ancient science is linked to the higher dimensions, so that is why scientifically we can know that in the fourth dimension there are entities. And what is the fourth dimension? If we talk about the fourth dimension, it is because someone can experience it, or the fifth or the sixth. They are real. They are the dimensions that have been spoken of in all cultures. Now I am going to name a little of that too. Speaking of this science, how did the shamans cure? With those dances and songs. With what did they communicate? With the elements of nature, which are in a higher dimension, which our senses do not see, but everyone has documented those things, those devas, angels, semigods, elements of nature. Today's science can have very advanced things, but it is put at the service of it is not at the service of materialism. It is not at all at the service of improving people's lives. But the ancient science of the shamans, of the initiates, of the Gnostics who knew the dimensions and the divine power of nature, had contact and had a deeper, more human science. These are the dimensions that they experienced and who experience, those who have the conscience to experience them. Just as we have the conscience to experience this reality, one can develop. And we will give the keys to develop the conscience to experience other realities, other dimensions. The Kabbalah. The Sephirots of the Kabbalah are the dimensions, the Pistis Sophia, that is discovered, that is Jesus, the one who speaks of the eons, which are the dimensions, the tree of the Vikings, Yggdrasil, the one of the Aztecs, 13 heavens, 9 hells, the Kabbalah. As Dante spoke, Dante Alighieri, who speaks of the 9 hells when he goes and tells all that is like that, they are dimensions of nature, superior and inferior. In the 4th dimension there are winged beings. In India you can also see beings with wings. The angels, the archangels. In Judaism, in Christianity, the Devis of India, the gods and semi-goddesses of the Greco-Roman culture. A lot of things. Samael Aun says that the Aztec shamans receive priests, the Spanish priests. And the Spanish priests were told about the angels and everything to tell the uncivilized Aztecs that there were angels and that there were gods and all this. Right. And the Aztecs, what they did was put them in peyote food, peyote. The peyote. And they put peyote in their food, and the peyote is a substance that allows one. You have to be careful with these things, but it allows one to experience the 4th dimension. And there they began to see a lot of entities, the Spanish priests. The Spanish priests, the Spanish priests, the Spanish priests, and they told about demonic or something to the Aztecs, and they killed them all. And the Aztecs had told them, all those angels that you name us, we already know them, we talk to them every day, we have experience, contact with that world. Well, how is it possible? This is how it is. Another pillar of the Gnosis is the philosophy of the Gnosis, the philosophy of living, as it is well known in the present. It is the philosophy of momentaneity, of the present moment, of the here and now. And together with science and mysticism, we can live it in a superior way. We can live meditation, we can know dreams. We can experience many things in dreams. We can experience the same exit in astral. What is all this? And we will talk about all this in other classes, about meditation, about dreams, about the astral projection. And as I said just now, about the mysticism, that philosophy, the philosophy linked to science and mysticism, right? The mysticism is another pillar of the Gnosis. What is the mysticism? It is an emotional state, superior, that one seeks. And that can be fed through practices. And let's see in the history of Hinduism, of Christianity itself, these are levitations. These are high vibrational states. Where we can experience other dimensions. Deep inner states, levitate, genius science. This science is not very well known. This science explains how we can enter our body inside the 4th dimension. Wow! Let's see the story of Saint Francis of Assisi. There are many documents about what he did that were suspended in the trees. In the cups of the trees, many witnesses of that moment. But materialism does not allow us to believe in those things, because it cannot check them and because it cannot make them, because it does not have the tools, and we need a higher teaching than what I said at the beginning, higher than intellectual knowledge. We have to experience all these things ourselves. That is faith, as Master Samael says. Faith is knowing. We have to have intuitive knowledge, at least of what we believe. Another example of levitation and jinnahs, Joseph of Cupertino. 70 times, they say, it is documented that he had levitation and that he disappeared. Even the same Pope, I do not remember the name of the Pope now, sends a cardinal to investigate this. So how? How did they do it? How did they put this vibrational level? How did they put this vibrational level in a higher state? Well, there are what are called the three brains in the human body. We do not only have one, we have three brains, the intellectual, the emotional, and the instinctive motor sexual. We will talk about this, of course, in a class 2. So when one relaxes and has higher states, and calms all the ridiculous thoughts of life and the worries of life, of how life is now and what we have to do, one can enter into an ecstasy that allows him to experiment and have images and have sensations and have knowledge that does not come from the intellectual side. And those who manage to have this very developed manage to levitate. They change the laws of where they are. They change and allow something else to happen. Because this reality has its laws. We will also talk about the laws of planes and dimensions. How many laws are there in each dimension? Einstein himself said that what vibrates at the speed of light changes dimension. Philosophy is to love wisdom. Wisdom is part of what philosophy means. To love wisdom. And how am I going to love wisdom? Well, there is the Gnosis, there is the inner development, the inner love for work, for the sacrifice of things. In life there is sacrifice all the time for another thing to be born. We will talk about this too, of course. The other pillar, the art. The link with the art always had to do with the demonstration of knowledge. The art originally had to do with the demonstration of knowledge. Let's look at the paintings, the sculptures, statues, low reliefs. Aztecs, Mayans, Hindus. Let's look at the Gnostics. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, they sought to transmit the information for the path. Their purpose was that. They had a superior purpose in their art. It was not simply to earn money and fame. No. It was not for that. What did art teach? It taught to live better. The dances themselves had to do with the functionalism of the three brains that I said, with the health of the body. Unify us with the divine. Unify us with divinity. And allow us to incarnate into being. That is to live better. That is to live in happiness. So I'm going to tell you how all this comes so easily to our lives. Who was Master Samael Aun-Weor? That I said I was going to talk about him. Master Samael Aun-Weor was a man who was born in Colombia in 1917, and that from an early age he had many awakened faculties. He had an awakened conscience. He tells a lot about this in his book of the Three Mountains, which is an incredible book, very advanced. He tells that as a young man he had faculties. He had faculties, already the little friends, he with his little friends, they already experienced rare things. Also, for example, he had the capacity of astral unfolding. He could enter the fourth dimension of will. Then, by having all this, he had an interest, a very deep spiritual thirst in life. He had a very spiritual thirst in life. As a kid, he also climbed up the roof of his house when he STANED to receive the sun by meditation. Where did he get all this out of? With this child. Later in his life, he enters the Theosophical School that Helena Blavatsky had to do with his foundation. Helena Blavatsky was an occultist. A person who knows what an occultist is, I don't know, but it has a teaching that is hidden, and it has a reason why they are hidden. We will talk about it at another time. At the age of 17, Master Samael already gives classes in the Theosophical School. At the age of 17, imagine the information he had, the interest. At the age of 18, he was also with the Frankmasons of Crumhella. And at that time, the Masonry had the knowledge. It was not the same as now. Crumhella was also an initiator. He talked a lot about many things that Master Samael talks about, because what Master Samael does is to make a synthesis of all the important things that are needed to cross the path of the spirit, the path towards being. The Master Samael talks a lot about many things when he talks about the transformation of impressions that is also in other authors. When he But why is it a single teaching? It is the Gnosis. It is a single thing that we have to learn and develop in ourselves. So, tired of those theories, Master Samael, because he saw that all the teaching was very theoretical, in schools he begins to seek his being. Within him, he begins on that path. And in fact he healed people for free with dyes and with white magic, of course. With his powers that he was awakening throughout his life. The doctors didn't like it very much, and the ecclesiastics didn't either. So, giving testimony to his disciples, his family members, of his miracles, he had to escape. He had to escape walking towards Mexico. He went walking towards Mexico with his children and his wife. They wanted to kill him. That happens a lot in the history of humanity. Master Samael reveals to us in his work, in his incredible and free work, because he renounces the rights of the author of his approximately 70 books. He reveals the Gnosis for the era of Aquarius. He reveals what we have to do. He collects all the ancestral information In the book, he studied in the book of the inner nature, in the book of the outer nature. He could go astral to the will, and from there he nourished himself. Many people know what the Akashic records are. Well, Master Samael, of course, could find out and check what were the things veridical that humanity needs. So, I also want to say that there are many branches of the Gnosis, of Gnosticism. Many branches that have changed the teaching of the Master. We do not change absolutely anything of the teaching of the Master. And of course, at my age I did not learn from the Master directly. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit, but you have to be careful with the people who use the Gnosis for the evil, to do the evil, and that has changed. Disciples of the same have changed. But we are not going to speak badly of the people. We just want to tell them that we are going to show what Master Samael says and what he revealed, because we do not have enough life to study everything that this Lord said in his 70 books, and Master Samael has revealed those keys that they will not find anywhere, because that was his role, to reveal this for humanity. I want to say that Gnosis is for everyone. It does not matter our religion. It does not matter our sex, where we are from. If we have previous knowledge or we do not have previous knowledge, it does not matter. Gnosis is there for whoever wants to have it, live it, experience it. And that is why, if you are interested in this first class, continue with the next 2, to be more clear about what this path is about. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time.